Hey, podcast listeners. I am so excited to share today about reactive anger, which is a different type of anger than what we have discussed in the past on this podcast that is called Angry at the Right Things and is all about anger. So I'm excited to share this new kind of anger that we have not explored before. But before we begin, please subscribe to this podcast if you haven't already, as well as my YouTube page, which is just called my name, Bronwyn Schwagert, as well as share this with a friend. And please give me a great review. Okay, here we go. We're going to talk about reactive anger. There is a sci-fi streaming series in which there is an underground network of women who are being trained to become what are called truth sayers. Now, I don't love the series, so I'm not going to share it, but I do love that name, truth sayer. That is awesome. It reminds me of the word soothsayer. A soothsayer is someone who supposedly tells the future. And I realized, I'm not really into knowing the future because I think what matters most is that we know the truth about the present. And very few people know that. And so I'm all about being a truth sayer. And I realized when I watched this series that I am a truth sayer, and I have been my whole life. I remember being the age 6 years old, being in the grocery store and seeing a mom with a young son in her cart, and she picked up a box of sugary cereal and put it in the cart. And I felt compelled to go up to her and let her know that that sugary cereal is not good for her or her son. And I'm sure you are not surprised that she did not appreciate that truth at that moment. But I was surprised. She just looked at me and said, I know, and continued on her way. So that is my first memory of being a truth sayer, but it was not my last. This habit has gotten me in so much trouble throughout my life, as it took about 50 years for me to realize how many people are exactly like that woman and do not appreciate the truth. You see, I always believed that truth would always be welcome, but I had to learn the hard way through lots of lost friendships just how false this notion is. Now, don't get me wrong. I thank God daily for those lost friendships because being friends with someone who is in denial is soul sucking. Truth may not be popular, but it is good. And I have nothing to prove anymore. On this podcast, I help listeners understand that their anger is based in truth and keeps them in touch with reality. Anger, healthy anger, is grounding and empowering, and we channel it out of our bodies into boundaries, assertiveness, and accountability. However, we do need to distinguish between this type of anger and reactive anger, which is not healthy. Reactive anger is fueled by shame and it fights the truth. Reactive anger is a defense mechanism designed to repair the wall of denial that has just taken a hit, mostly by a truth sayer. If you encounter reactive anger, it is a tell because it means you are exposing truth about something that person cannot be honest about. Like a dog that growls and bares its teeth, reactive anger is designed to intimidate the truth sayer and make them second guess themselves. I recently attempted to gently confront a friend of mine who I believe was in denial of something, and I shared my concern for her. In response, I received a reactive email of denial and accusation, saying my motive for suggesting that she was in denial was vindictive, based on the fact that there was something we did not agree on. I thought as I read this email, methinks thou doth protest too much. The reactive anger in her email confirmed to me the truth of my original assertion. When we're intimidated by reactive anger, it's because we do not realize how powerful truth is. You see, truth always wins. There is nothing equivalent to the power of truth. And it is not the truth sayer's fault that the truth hurts. We need to recognize that the reactive person is the one who is actually intimidated, and therefore not let them intimidate us. We need to just stand our ground, look them in the eyes, and say, we both know what I'm saying is true. If that hurts, it is not my responsibility. Reactively angry people are often excellent spin doctors. And unfortunately, because most truth sayers are people who will easily second guess themselves, this is not a good combo. This is because truth sayers have empathy and don't want to believe the person right in front of them is lying to their face. We want to see the good in people. Truth sayers cannot imagine looking someone else right in the eyes and lying to them. That's because our imagination, it makes it so unfathomable to us that that is actually what is happening right in the present, because it is. Truth sayers want to love others, but ultimately need to recognize that love cannot exist apart from truth. Without truth, there is no real love. We truth sayers need to get savvy. We cannot afford to be naive. We need to check in with our gut when someone tries to make us second guess ourselves and say to ourselves, that just doesn't feel right. Or, I think this is a lie. Or even better, hell no, this is not true. We need to maintain eye contact, not back down, and just say, we both know that's not true. We need to give up on ever convincing the person, because the greatest truth is recognizing they don't want to hear us and therefore never will. We do not owe them an explanation, but we do owe ourselves a big fat boundary with them. When my father was still in my life, he used to make me second guess myself with his reactive anger, saying, Bronwyn, I don't know where you're getting your information. A few years ago, when he used that exact phrase in response to an email I sent him, it finally clicked. It dawned on me, how many times have I heard that in my life? And how many times did it work on me? Well, no more. But here's what truth sayers most need to know. We can trust ourselves. The word mystic comes from a root word called Mayan, which means to shut one's eyes. In other words, a mystic is someone who knows that their eyes can be easily deceived, and so they shut them and instead tune into their body, because they know that their gut, our gut, will not lie. It will not allow us to be deceived ever if we listen to it. When someone has reactive anger, we know that we're onto something, as it's evocative for them and therefore reveals its validity. That makes us the powerful ones. We don't have to play defense, when in reality, they're the ones on the defense. The truth does the work for us and needs no convincing. We just stand our ground, look them in the eyes, and say, the truth hurts, huh? All right, guys, that is this episode today. Thank you for listening. Again, please share this. Please give me a 5-star review, and please subscribe to this podcast and my YouTube channel if you have not already. Thank you.